The main reason is that we were on a very tight time schedule from the time that the details and the engineering was all completed until the customer wanted the locomotives operating.
It's the first time anybody's flown a locomotive, so it was a unique challenge for everybody, and it's been quite complicated.
Customer satisfaction in this case wasn't just the development of what will be a tremendous locomotive for Irish Rail to use over the next 30 years, but also getting it here when they had the real requirement to pull passengers and to pull freight. This has probably been, and talking to the folks that do this for a living, one of the most extensively planned logistics moves that anybody can remember commercially. I understand today when they did the final weighing that we have set a world's record, not only the first time a locomotive's moved, but it's the largest payload ever. There were numbers of folks, obviously both in LaGrange and London, that were involved. Significant amount of time and effort from our production people, our manufacturing engineers, our design staff, as well as a number of logistics providers, the airfoil people, the people on both sides of the move. And I'd also like to give some credit to the planning to Irish Rail. They've worked with us all along. They've been a partner all the way through this process, and they've been a significant part of the reason we could pull it off.
The first steps in a long journey began on the evening of Monday, June 8th. Moving the locomotive from the London plant to the nearby London airport proved to be a challenge in itself. In-plant cranes lifted the giant orange and yellow locomotive onto a huge steel 96-wheel trailer. A 600-horsepower tractor hauled this impressive load of 109 metric tons, or 240,000 pounds, the mile and a half to the airport, amid much attention from both the media and interested spectators. Waiting at the airport was the world's largest commercial jet, an Antonov 124-100. Based in Kiev in the Ukraine, this jet already held a world record for heavy lifting by air. Spokesman Paul Furlonger from Airfoil, the British firm which leased the aircraft, described some of its features.
She can carry, if we're not putting anything else in, a maximum of 250 metric tons of fuel. She has a maximum payload normally of 120 metric tons, and we can exceed that on specific occasions for particular cargoes like this one, where we do a tremendous amount of preliminary work. The cargo hold is 36.5 meters long, 6.4 meters wide and 4.4 meters high. The airplane has unrestricted access to that hold thanks to the nose door, which lifts up and reveals a ramp which unfolds, and similarly at the back there's a ramp which drops down, and you can literally drive a very large truck straight through from one end to the other, out the other side. The airplane's also equipped with two 30 kilonewton winches for pulling very heavy cargoes like this one into the airplane, and overhead cranes which in the standard fit can lift up to 20 tons. We carry a crew of 21 Ukrainians and one of us from Airfoil wherever the airplane goes. That's usually about 9 in the cockpit, and the other 10 or 11 are technicians who are responsible for loading the airplane and also for line maintenance as we run around the track. She cruises at about 700 kilometers an hour. That's about 480 knots, and she burns anywhere between 10 and 15 tons of fuel per hour. Just in the taxi, in other words from where she's parked to the end of the runway, we usually burn about 3 tons. That's about 1,000 gallons. So she's quite a thirsty beast.
The Antonov crew, in conjunction with Itarco, undertook the time-consuming and complex task of loading the locomotive the following morning. First, a steel frame had to be built to carry the weight of the locomotive into the nose of the aircraft. To guide the locomotive into position, the loading crew built temporary railway tracks onto the titanium floor of the jet. Much of the challenge of the loading maneuver centered around distributing the weight of the locomotive evenly on the floor of the aircraft.
To spread the weight, you need to basically increase the height by putting wood or steel underneath the locomotive to give it a bigger footprint on the floor. And the locomotive's just over 4 meters high, and the airplane's only 4.4 meters max available height. So there's not a lot of height to play with, and that produced quite a few problems. Then once it's in the airplane, you've got to tie it down securely to make sure it doesn't move around. Realise that there's quite a bit of turbulence up there. You don't want 100 tons bouncing up and down.
Chet Huber outlined some of the features of the Antonov's unique cargo, a new Irish rail locomotive, a very flexible unit with cabs at both ends.
This locomotive, the JT42 HCW, represents the first modern design of a diesel-electric locomotive to go into service in Europe in a number of years. It's a 3,000 horsepower locomotive designed for both high-speed passenger service and for heavy-haul freight application. It's 50% more powerful than anything they've got in their fleet today, and it'll represent a tremendous improvement both in efficiency and in reliability. Since it is a new design, a microprocessor-based locomotive, it needs to be type tested, and we need to make sure that we've got the software written correctly so that it'll perform at all ranges of speeds. Safety obviously is a major issue for both Irish Rail and for ourselves, and so we've got a considerable amount of not only testing on the locomotive, but training that'll be required for the drivers and the staff here to make sure they can get the best possible use out of the product.
Well, this is very, very significant in Road Éireann context. This is the first locomotive of a batch of 10, and they will replace part of our aging fleet of locomotives. They'll go into the mainline services, will operate passenger trains at up to 100 miles an hour, and will haul our freight trains on the main line with trading loads of up to 1,500 tons.
Back in London, the long day's night turned to day once again as the locomotive carefully inched its way into the cargo bay. Finally, the aircraft crew signaled it was ready to depart on an airlift mission that had by now attracted the attention of thousands of interested observers. At 1:20 on the afternoon of Wednesday, June 9th, some 40 hours after leaving the London plant, the Antonov turned slowly onto the runway and powered its way into the sky. The journey took it first to Montreal, Quebec, then Gander, Newfoundland, and finally Keflavik, Iceland, before beginning the last 3-hour leg due south to Dublin, Ireland. Touchdown time was 7:35 a.m. Dublin time, where another welcoming audience waited patiently for the unloading operation to begin.
The flight over was pretty good. The weather was relatively favourable. It was pouring with rain in Gander, but apart from that, it was a smooth trip. There are different problems for unloading, but really unloading comparatively is just a piece of cake. When we loaded, we had to create the bridge between the airplane and the trailer from scratch, just like building a Lego set or a Meccano set. But having built it, we were able to keep large sections of it together, and that's made rebuilding it much easier. Of course, with unloading, the track's already laid inside the airplane, which it wasn't for the loading. So, you know, again, you've got 2 or 3 hours minimum saved there. Untying the locomotive is much, much easier than tying it down, and we had 95 or 96 tie-down chains on the locomotive. They take a long time to set, and undoing them's easy.
This is quite a big job for us. Initially we'll have to do some out-road tests and complete the commissioning of the units out on the main line. And of course we will have to train all our people, train our maintenance crews, train our drivers. And as there's quite a lot of new technology in these units, yes, we see it as quite an important and time-consuming job. We thought it very important to get it in here as quickly as possible, and we certainly appreciated General Motors' efforts to get it here quickly. The significance of it for us is that we can commission the remaining units very quickly. We estimate that we can, in fact, bring the remaining units into service about 4 weeks earlier as a result of having this unit delivered quickly.
By midnight, Irish Rail Unit 201 was sitting on another platform trailer ready for the 7-mile voyage into the heart of Dublin and the Inchicore rail yards. Once again, careful planning of every step of the journey allowed for a prompt and incident-free trip. In the early hours of the morning, the locomotive that flew arrived at its new home. Within 48 hours, the rigorous process of testing and training had begun.
We're in the business of making locomotives, and our customers are in the business of operating locomotives. And when together we jointly design this new generation high horsepower locomotive with Irish Rail, it becomes apparent in a hurry that it doesn't do us any good if it's on one side of the ocean and the need to actually pull the freight cars and the passenger on this side of the ocean. So customer satisfaction in this case wasn't just the development of what will be a tremendous locomotive for Irish Rail to use over the next 30 years, but also getting it here when they had the real requirement to pull passengers and to pull freight. And so the customer satisfaction issue here extends beyond the hardware. It extends into the issue of on-time delivery, and in this case, expedited delivery, with expedited in capital letters.
Thank you.